45 years after this girl was adopted, she finds out what really happened. Between 1953 and 2020, South Korea has had more than 167,000 of its children adopted by families across the world, and one, Denise McCarty, thought that her story was an unremarkable one, just like the many children who had been given away as well. The young girl was apparently left abandoned at a hospital and was soon officially adopted by a family from Vermont, who welcomed the toddler to their family. Such a thing had become quite common as an aftermath of the Korean War, and the years that followed its conclusion, particularly between 1980 and 1989, tens of thousands of Korean children made the journey from their home country to new adopted families in Western countries. This was because many of the orphans had been fathered by American soldiers who had come over to support the South Korean effort, and the post-war poverty pushed more and more children into orphanages. However, though they often grew up with good families, they do have a burning curiosity to know who they were and who their parents were. For this reason, a trio of South Korean public bodies collaborated on a project designed to reconnect adopted children with their birth families. It only required that both parties would be interested in the reunion, as it wouldn't rely on paperwork to prove the biological bonds. There are many options for this, like knowing the biological parent's name or contact information, but for the children who don't know anything, they can have their DNA tested. In the case of Denise, she visited South Korea in 2016 and submitted her genetic information in hopes of finding her biological family. She wanted to know why she was abandoned and maybe gain some insight into her heritage, but she wasn't expecting that only mere days later, she would have her first contact with her relatives. It all happened so fast. She was understandably nervous that she wouldn't hear things that she would like, but had no idea that the truth of her abandonment would be something she would never have expected. As Denise's screen lit up to show her mother, Lee Young-sun, the old woman began to tear up at the sight of the daughter she hadn't seen for 44 years. And an interpreter slowly revealed the story behind the adoption of Denise, whose birth name was Sang-ae. For years, Denise had thought she had been abandoned at a hospital, but Young-sun told the heartbreaking truth. The toddler had actually gotten separated from her biological family when they visited Seoul's Namdaemun market in 1976. Denise had gone to the market that day with her biological grandmother and sister, Sang-hee, but the elderly carer had been separated from the two girls, which resulted in them going missing. Fortunately, the family found Sang-hee within 3 days of her disappearance, but had no idea what happened to their other daughter. Still, the family had made it their mission to find her, and Young-sun revealed that they had even opened businesses where they lost her. "I looked carefully at every child that passed my shop," she said. "I never forgot you." Not only did the DNA test give Denise the answer to her abandonment, but it also gave her biological family the answers to their search, which had never stopped. When Young-sun realized that Denise had somehow ended up in a Suwon hospital before Holt's Children's Services had facilitated her adoption to an American family, she was brought to tears because her exhaustive search for her daughter had never extended beyond South Korea's capital city.
우리는 너 절대 버린 거 아니야. 여기 호적에 다 살아있어. 여기 있어. 너 있어.
Surely exists in the documents.
내 손 다 풀었다.
The revelation brought Denise to tears as well, as the burden of her heart finally eased up in the revelation that she had always been wanted, and she apologized to her oma, the Korean word for mother, for getting lost on that fateful day and having left them to spend years searching for her. However, she also thanked her for never giving up on her either. Indeed, Young-sun had plenty of proof that her search had been an extensive one. She held on to the flyers she had hung up of the little girl and never left the village in case she came back. The family had also requested a police search for their daughter and visited orphanages all across Seoul to see if she was there. They had even gone on a TV program that was designed to reconnect guests with their lost relatives, which had proven to be a fruitless endeavor. Unfortunately, not all the relatives who had been involved in the search were able to see the long-awaited reunion. Denise's guilt-stricken grandmother had passed away, and her father had also passed due to grief. Still, Denise got to meet other members of her family and had a happy reunion with her twin sister, and the two lookalikes quickly realized that they had a lot in common, despite having never met each other. The duo both loved to travel, enjoyed the same foods, and even found the same things funny. Of course, the video chat was just the beginning of getting to re-know each other after 4 decades, and Denise plans to travel to South Korea as soon as possible to meet with her mother, brother, and sister. Until then, though, she kept in touch through a texting app that automatically translated their messages to one another, as the language barrier would be another thing they would have to overcome. On that note, Denise plans to become more immersed in her home country's culture, and her twin agreed to start teaching her Korean in exchange for English lessons from her American-raised sister. Denise also vowed to spend the rest of her life rebuilding the bond with her family, arranging a rendezvous where both parents could meet each other and bring both halves of her family together. "I've just got this huge family now that loves me and that I love. You can't be happier than that," Denise says. You can't ask for more than that. The happy ending is even more precious because most South Korean adoptees never find their biological families, and Denise and Jung's son didn't take that fact for granted. "I can't describe how happy I am," the old woman said. "I feel like dancing all the time. Sleepless nights, thick with grief, are gone now. I'm so happy, and I can't wait to see her in person."
사내야 빨리 마셔. 너무 보고 싶어.